A Godzilla look-alike invades the city, prompting an emergency alert. Citizens are instructed to seek refuge in the government-built shelters designed for situations like this. Monsters called Kaiju frequently invade cities across the country. To combat these threats, a special defense unit called the 3rd Division has been established to eliminate the Kaiju. As soon as the 3rd Division arrives, they open fire on the monster, targeting its stomach, which is its weak point, to slow it down. Their leader then finishes it off by blasting it with a weapon specially designed to eliminate Kaiju. A man named Kafka, in his early 30s, munches on his hamburger while watching from afar as machines are set in place to clean up the remains of the monsters. He is part of the cleaning team called Sweepers, who specialize in disposing of the monsters and cleaning up the city. The crowd cheers for the 3rd Division for defeating the Kaiju without any casualties. However, no one pays attention to the Sweepers, who are responsible for disposing of the Kaiju remains. Despite the lack of appreciation, Kafka sees his job as important and doesn't mind the indifference of others. They cut the Kaiju piece by piece. Suddenly, one of the workers slices an organ, causing acidic blood to spill out and burn the worker's knee. Kafka quickly runs to his colleague, knowing how to treat the wound since he has experienced it several times. As he looks at the workload remaining, he wonders how the government expects them to finish in a week. He silently blames the 3rd Division for always leaving such a big mess for them to clean up. His supervisor informs him that he has been assigned to another section of the Kaiju, the intestines. Kafka tries to protest, but he is dragged away. When he sees the intestines, he almost throws up from the overwhelming stench. Despite his nausea, he knows he has to get to work. After a long day at work, he returns home late. He hates that he still stinks despite having showered. He watches the news and sees the 3rd Division being praised, especially their captain, Mina Ashiro, who became the youngest captain at 27 and is renowned for defeating hundreds of Kaiju. It turns out that Kafka and Mina are childhood friends. He recalls their promise to each other to eradicate all Kaiju. Kafka always wanted to join the defense force, but he wonders how things ended with him on the wrong side. He tries consoling himself that his job is important as well. The next day at work, his colleague Toku introduces him to the new team member, Ikikawa. Ikikawa mentions that he aims to join the defense force. Toku laughs and reveals that Kafka once had the same dream. Ikikawa asks Kafka why he gave up on his ambitions. Kafka explains that his abilities were limited and he wasn't good enough to join the defense force. He says that Ikikawa will understand his plight when he is older. Ikikawa responds that he has no intention of understanding because, unlike Kafka, he doesn't plan to give up. He then leaves the room, leaving Kafka feeling like a loser. The cleaning continues, and once again, Kafka is assigned to the intestine section along with Ikikawa. During lunch, Ikikawa struggles to eat because of the stench he had to endure from the Kaiju's intestines. Noticing this, Kafka offers him a multivitamin drink and nose plugs. Ikikawa immediately rejects the nose plugs, imagining how many others must have used them. However, Kafka chases him around, insisting that he accept them. After the day's work, Ikikawa approaches Kafka and thanks him for helping him get through his first day. Kafka is surprised. Before leaving, Ikikawa informs Kafka that he can still apply for the defense force one last time, as the age limit has been increased to 32. Moved by Ikikawa's kind gesture, Kafka thanks him. As Ikikawa turns to reply, a Kaiju suddenly appears behind him with its mouth wide open, ready to devour him. Fortunately, Kafka reacts quickly and pushes Ikikawa out of the way. Kafka tells Ikikawa to run away. At first, Ikikawa hesitates to leave Kafka alone, but Kafka urges him to alert the defense force. Reluctantly, Ikikawa runs to get help while Kafka distracts the Kaiju, leading it in the opposite direction. Kafka lures the Kaiju to a building with a narrow entrance, dashes inside, and then leaps out of the building by jumping through a window. As he falls, he recalls his childhood friend Mina crying over the loss of her cat, home, and school. They sat on the ground, watching the destroyed city. Kafka declared his intention to join the defense force when he grew up, and Mina agreed to do the same. They promised to become cool defense force officers who would fight side by side to eliminate all Kaiju. Luckily, Kafka lands smoothly on the ground. He regrets not being able to join the defense force as he had planned. He continues to run as the Kaiju chases him. Grabbing a steel pipe, he tries to attack the Kaiju, but it lands a heavy blow on him, sending him to the ground with a broken leg. Unable to escape, Kafka braces for the Kaiju's attack. Just in time, Ikikawa appears and injures the Kaiju's jaw, saving Kafka. Kafka asks Ikikawa why he came back when he was clearly told to run away. Ikikawa replies that he has already notified the task force and he couldn't join the defense force if he let Kafka die. Kafka tries to stand up to help Ikikawa. Suddenly, a white tiger appears and attacks the kaiju, followed by several blasts. The final blast blows the kaiju up. Kafka and Ikikawa are shocked by how quickly the 3rd Division took it down. Mina appears and gives orders to care for the wounded. She walks away without sparing Kafka a glance. At the hospital, Kafka acknowledges Mina's strength. She is at a level he can no longer reach. He is proud of who she has become, but he feels sad that she ignored him as if he were nobody. Ikikawa disrupts his train of thought, thanking him for saving his life and admitting that Kafka was cool. He encourages Kafka to apply to the Defense Force one last time. Motivated by Ikikawa's words, Kafka decides to try again. Just then, Kafka notices a small kaiju fly. Before he can react and call for help, the kaiju forces its way down Kafka's throat. He begins to move erratically. Ikikawa checks on him, but sees a kaiju sitting on the bed. Kafka looks at his reflection in the window, and they both scream simultaneously. Kafka quickly assures him that he is still the same Kafka. An old man sees the commotion and contacts the Defense Force for help. Ikikawa immediately suggests that they leave the hospital before the Defense Force arrives. Mina thinks back to her childhood days with Kafka. They used to go to the bookshop together to read, and she would tease him for reading mangas. She thanks him for always being by her side. In the present, Mina is informed that a kaiju has been spotted at the hospital. She gathers her squad and prepares to take it out without causing harm to the people. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ikikawa tries to calm the old man's fears by telling Kafka to smile at him. But it only terrifies the old man more as he sees a kaiju grinning at him. The old man has a heart attack and dies out of fear. As Kafka checks on the old man, he places his hand on the wall, which completely shatters like a bomb explosion. Both Kafka and Ikikawa scream in shock, attracting the attention of other patients. Ikikawa suggests they leave before the Defense Force arrives, and Kafka agrees, realizing his presence is causing more chaos. He suggests escaping through the window, but as soon as he touches it, he unintentionally shatters it, causing more damage to the hospital building. Kafka and Ikikawa stare at the massive destruction in wide-eyed disbelief. Well, that's one way to make an exit. As they jump out of the window, Kafka wonders what is wrong with his body. The Defense Force is already informed that the kaiju has fled the hospital and is headed to the evacuated area. Meanwhile, as Ikikawa runs, he wonders how Kafka became a kaiju. He glances back to confirm if Kafka is really a kaiju and sees the most disgusting form imaginable. Kafka even snags a bird with his tongue for no reason, making Ikikawa cringe. Surprisingly, Kafka then reverts to his usual kaiju form, leaving Ikikawa both baffled and horrified. Kafka asks Ikikawa if he can still join the Defense Force. Ikikawa tells him that it's impossible. He is now the very thing they are protecting the city against, and they will kill him on sight. This realization shatters Kafka's dream of joining the Defense Force and fulfilling the promise he made to Mina. Ikikawa quickly finds a place for Kafka to hide, but Kafka suddenly stops, sensing something dangerous approaching them from underground. Turns out it's another kaiju. The Defense Force is informed that another kaiju has been spotted, so they split up to better control the situation. Kafka can tell it's the same type of kaiju that attacked them earlier. Ikikawa points out that this is his chance to hide from the Defense Force since they now have fewer men to focus on him. Kafka reluctantly agrees and starts running to find a place to hide. Meanwhile, a little girl cries for help as her mother is trapped. Her cries attract the kaiju, which opens its mouth to devour her. Kafka appears and lands a heavy punch on the kaiju, sending it flying miles away and causing more damage to the area. Even Kafka is shocked at the extent of his strength. The girl, however, becomes terrified upon seeing Kafka. He tries to calm her by smiling, but it only scares her more. Ikikawa arrives to help the girl as Kafka lifts the furniture off her mother. The kaiju returns, and Kafka tells Ikikawa to take the girl and her mother to safety while he deals with the threat. Lightning emits from his body as he charges up and hits the kaiju with such force that it is sent flying and pops like a balloon. Ikikawa is stunned by what he has just witnessed. The little girl thanks Kafka for saving her mother, which makes him remember Mina when she was young, thanking him for always being there for her and feeling less scared in his presence. Kafka imagines being by Mina's side as a defense officer fighting kaijus. He then tells Ikikawa that he will not give up on his dream to join the Defense Force. With newfound determination, he starts transforming back to his human self. When the Defense Force arrives at the scene, they come across the remains of the defeated kaiju and wonder what transpired. Mina asks the little girl to tell her what happened, but she is too frightened to speak. Mina reassures her, promising to eliminate all the kaiju so she never has to be scared again. The little girl pleads with her not to destroy the good kaiju that saved her and her mother. Mina is taken aback. She has never heard of a good kaiju before. A drawing of Kafka's kaiju form, described by the little girl, is sketched and broadcasted on the news. It's given the code name, Kaiju 8, by the Defense Force. 3 months have passed, and Kafka is now the first kaiju in history to have eluded the Defense Force. Every defense officer is on the hunt for him. Ikikawa receives news that the entrance exam results are out. He checks his own and finds that he passed. Before meeting Kafka, he looks up Kafka's result and discovers that he also passed. Excitedly, Ikikawa rushes to find Kafka to share the good news. However, when he sees Kafka, he notices that Kafka has transformed into his kaiju form. Acting quickly, Ikikawa kicks him in the stomach to prevent him from exposing his kaiju form in the open. Kafka, unaware that he had transformed, promptly reverts to his human form. Ikikawa explains that they managed to avoid suspicion by claiming they had escaped when the kaiju appeared. He then reveals his own result to Kafka, expecting him to be thrilled. However, Kafka doesn't seem too happy. He confesses that he always passes the first round but fails the second round. Ikikawa ponders how Kafka will fare in the second round exam, considering there will be officers everywhere. He worries that Kafka might struggle to conceal his kaiju form for long. However, Kafka assures him that this is his final opportunity to join the Defense Force, so he will participate in the second round exam. Despite his efforts over the past 3 months to hide his kaiju form, Kafka admits that he has been unable to fully transform into a human. Nonetheless, he resolves to do everything in his power to keep his kaiju form hidden during the exam. Ikikawa makes it clear that during the exam, Kafka is on his own and they will be rivals. While attempting to open a water bottle, Kafka struggles and ultimately resorts to using his kaiju strength to open it. Witnessing this, Ikikawa scolds him, suggesting that he should just give up on joining the Defense Force. Kafka pleads with Ikikawa to forgive him. 10 days later, Ikikawa and Kafka arrive at the venue for the second round selection test. Ikikawa is amazed by how massive the Defense Force headquarters is. He notices numerous guards and warns Kafka to be cautious not to reveal his kaiju form, as it could result in immediate termination. As more candidates arrive at the venue, Ikikawa observes that most of them are young, which motivates him to give his best effort. A rude, yellow-haired girl calls Kafka an old man and demands he remove his ugly car from the parking space so she can park her car instead, claiming that the number 5 is her lucky number. Kafka is on the verge of losing his temper. He warns her not to insult him, stating that he's only 30. Unfazed, she removes her coat, revealing her suit underneath. She charges up and, with astonishing strength, lifts Kafka's minivan with one hand and hurls it away. Both Kafka and Ikikawa are stunned by her display of power. She introduces herself as Kikoru Shinomiya, then walks up to Kafka and sniffs him, asking why he smells like a kaiju. Ikikawa quickly comes to Kafka's rescue, explaining that they work in kaiju disposal. Kikoru wonders what a pair of disposal workers are doing at the exam. She stops talking when she sees Kafka lift his minivan back up. Shocked, she asks if he has his own private suit. Ignoring her question, Kafka introduces himself and tells her to remember his name, promising to show her his strength during the exam. Meanwhile, Kikoru's butler has already parked in Kafka's spot, leaving him fuming but helpless. Kikoru promises to crush him during the exam and walks away with her bodyguards. Boiling with anger, Ikikawa walks up to Kafka and scolds him. Kafka explains that he only transformed the parts Kikoru couldn't see. Ikikawa threatens to reveal his secret if he carelessly uses his powers in public again. As they walk into the building, Kafka is determined to prove himself and pass this time around. As the exam begins, Kafka finds it difficult to keep up with the other candidates. Before the exams, Ikikawa and Kafka discovered that the second round includes 2 parts, a fitness test and an aptitude test, about which they know nothing. They decided to focus on doing well in the fitness exam. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case for Kafka, as he struggles to keep pace, finding himself at the bottom of every exercise. By the end of the fitness test, Kafka places 219th out of 225 candidates. Kikoru walks up to him, showing off her result. She placed 5th. She proceeds to taunt him, saying she has yet to see the strength he bragged about during their previous meeting. Kafka feels embarrassed as she walks away, satisfied with his reaction. Ikikawa tells Kafka he is proud of him for making it through without using his kaiju powers. Kafka admits that it would be unfair to other candidates who have worked hard to be there, but he wished he had used his powers. Ikikawa explains that it's not entirely Kafka's fault he's at the bottom. Most of this year's applicants graduated from prestigious universities and colleges. For example, Haruichi Izumo, who ranked second in the fitness exams, graduated top of his class from Tokyo Neutralization University. Haru Furuhashi, a powerhouse who was valedictorian at Hakioji Neutralization Technical College, ranked third. Ai Kaguragi, the rising star of the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force, ranked first in the fitness exam. Finally, the youngest applicant, Kikoru, graduated at 16 from California Neutralization University, skipping 2 grades and becoming the youngest ever to do so. Most candidates are eager to see what she is truly made of. Kikoru walks up to Kafka again to brag. Kafka, admitting she is way better than him, grabs her shoulder. Her guards immediately slam him to the floor and proceed to beat the living shit out of him for touching her. Other candidates wonder what a loser like Kafka is doing there. Humiliated, Kafka is determined to excel in the next part of the second round, though he knows it seems impossible. Ikikawa reassures him, revealing that the second part of the test involves kaiju corpse disposal, their area of expertise. Confident, Kafka and Ikikawa are sure they will do well. Ashino, the vice captain of the 3rd Division, assembles the candidates to start the aptitude test. He informs them they will be eliminating living kaiju, causing Kafka and Ikikawa to scream in shock. They are given special suits. As Ikikawa dons his suit, he feels it pressing against his body, causing his heart to beat faster. The suit merges with his body, amplifying his muscle strength. Ashino explains that the suit is made from organic material obtained from a kaiju, massively multiplying the combat power of its wearer. The 3rd Division operator, Konomi, begins measuring the unleashed combat power of the candidates, starting with Ikikawa, who manages to unleash 8%. Other candidates follow, with most registering between 14 to 15%. Unleashed combat power indicates how much of the suit's power has been drawn out. Typically, the average is around 20% even after training. But everyone is shocked when Kikoru's unleashed combat power hits a whopping 46%, equivalent to the level of a platoon leader. They now understand why she is called the greatest talent. Ikikawa is disappointed with his 8%, currently the lowest score. Ashino reassures him that he did well for his first time, explaining that as long as he doesn't have a 0%, he's good to go. Despite this, Ashino is taken aback when Kafka scores a whooping 0%. Bursting into laughter, Ashino watches Kafka struggle to increase his percentage. Kikoru, on the other hand, is annoyed, having seen Kafka use his powers before and expecting more from him. They proceed to the training ground for the final exam. Hoshina informs them of a huge kaiju, known as Hanju, and 36 smaller ones, called Yaju. Drones will monitor their actions. The candidates are equipped with anti-kaiju weapons. If anyone's life is in danger, their suit will automatically activate a shield, resulting in immediate disqualification. Ashino warns that he can't guarantee everyone will survive the test, but if they still wish to participate, he wishes them good luck. The test begins, and they all jump into the field. Kikoru wastes no time, taking down the first Yaju she spots and continuing to eliminate more Yaju with impressive speed and skill. Meanwhile, Kafka finds it difficult to even lift his weapon. Ikikawa starts strategizing since they don't have enough combat power individually or together. Ashino announces that Mina, the captain of the 3rd Division, is present to supervise the exams. Upon hearing this, Kafka instantly becomes more focused. He realizes that the purpose of the drones is not merely to count the number of kaiju they kill, but to capture their abilities and how quickly they can adapt to situations. Since they lack offensive capabilities, he suggests they focus on supporting other candidates' attacks as best as they can. As they start running, they notice some candidates struggling to take down a Yaju. Taking cover, Kafka takes a good look at the Yaju and realizes he has seen it before while working in kaiju disposal, so he knows its weak point. He throws a stun grenade at it, explaining that the Yaju has weak eyesight but incredible hearing. Once deafened, they become easy targets. He tells Izumo to target its stomach, where its skin is weaker. Izumo looks at him skeptically but follows his advice. They defeat the Yaju, and Izumo thanks Kafka for the assist. Kafka and Ikikawa look for another group to support, but a Yaju grabs Kafka and throws him against a wall. The operation room reveals that Kafka is severely injured. As the Yaju approaches him, Kafka knows that if his shield is activated, he will be disqualified, so he struggles to stand up. Just as the Yaju is about to devour him, the operation room decides to activate his shield. Ashino states that he knew Kafka would be the first to drop out, which is too bad because he liked Kafka. Fortunately for Kafka, Kikoru arrives and kills the Yaju. She informs him that as long as she is on the battlefield, no one is allowed to die or quit. Just as Kafka is about to thank her for saving his life, she tells him to keep lying on the ground like a loser while she continues fighting. Kafka tries to stand up but can't. Ashino informs him that he has multiple fractures and possibly organ damage. Kafka is not ready to give up. He has come too far. He won't give up on his dream to stand beside Mina. He manages to stand on his feet, and at that moment, his combat power changes from 0% to 0.01%. Kikoru is shocked that Kafka can stand even with a broken leg. Ashino tells Kafka he can continue with the exam, but warns that he will activate the shield if Kafka's condition becomes critical. Kafka tells Ikikawa to go on without him so he doesn't slow him down. But to his surprise, Ikikawa extends his hand and says he won't leave him behind. Kafka recalls when Ikikawa saved him from the kaiju and gratefully takes his hand, happy to have such a steadfast friend. Ikikawa carries Kafka on his back, and Ashino laughs, wishing he could pass them for being so hilarious. Ikikawa acts as Kafka's legs, while Kafka uses his knowledge to guide their attacks. Their colleagues look at them like they're crazy. As they try to catch up, Kikoru swiftly eliminates all the remaining Yaju that others struggle with and moves on to the final part of the exam, killing the Hanju. She distracts it with a grenade, jumps onto its teeth with its mouth wide open, and shoots directly into its body, eliminating it. With the exams over, Kafka complains about Kikoru being too fast to keep up with, and he and Ikikawa collapse from exhaustion. Konomi informs Hashina they need to send medics to the injured candidates, but Hashino is distracted, marveling at how quickly Kikoru defeated the Hanju on her own. Nina is impressed by Kikoru's strength, finding her even more powerful than the rumors suggested. Hashino expected at least 30 candidates to drop out, but to his surprise, no one did. Thanks to Kikoru's presence, he predicts she will become a significant figure in the defense force and a beacon of hope for the country someday. As Kikoru heads back to rub her victory in Kafka's face, she senses something behind her. Before she can react, she is shot in the chest. On the other side, while Kafka was catching his breath, he acknowledged Kikoru's monstrous strength and felt grateful to her because everyone made it to the end thanks to her. Suddenly, the dead Yaju started coming back to life. Ikikawa immediately suggested they leave before things got extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, Kikoru was severely injured but managed to protect her heart by focusing her entire shield on a single point. She wondered what the human-like kaiju really was. It asked her why she wasn't dead yet. Kikoru was shocked that this kaiju could communicate and was intelligent. She tried to kill it, but the kaiju fired at her multiple times on different parts of her body. The operation room detected abnormalities in her vitals. Ashino sought to know what was going on down there, but there was no way to get any visual since the drones were no longer present. Konomi informed Hashino that they were picking up live signals from the kaiju that had been dead and that they were even stronger. She informed them that the estimated fortitude signal for the revived Hanju was 6.4. Mina immediately orders the activation of the candidates' shields. She calls Hashina to follow her as they head out. The trainees are instructed to evacuate to the nearest shelter, but Kikoru refuses to leave until she kills the Hanju. Using kaiju muscle fiber, she stops her bleeding, stands up, and gets ready to fight. She calls herself a perfect soldier and vows not to let anyone die as long as she is on the battlefield. Before she can fire, the Hanju easily slams her into a building. As she lies severely injured, she recalls her childhood. As a little girl, she scored the highest in her exams. While other students received praise from their parents, she received criticism from her father, who was hardly ever home. He told her not to get excited over one success, believing that excitement would lead to failure next time. He expected her to be perfect for the sake of the country and in memory of her dead mother. With determination, Kikoru leaps into the air, firing at the Hanju as her father's voice echoes in her head. She gets hit again, this time breaking her arm. She screams in pain as the Hanju regenerates its horn for another attack. Hashina and Mina are too far away to save her. Feeling hopeless, Kikoru apologizes to her father for not being the perfect soldier he wanted her to be. As the Hanju charges up for a blast, Kafka suddenly appears in front of her, praising her for doing a good job. She is shocked and wonders why he is here. Kafka shields her from the blast and transforms into his kaiju form, telling her to leave the rest to him. Kikoru is beyond shocked, while the other candidates continue evacuating the area. Ikikawa hopes the 3rd Division doesn't see Kafka in his kaiju form. He had left as soon as he heard Kikoru was in danger. Kikoru is speechless, lost in disbelief. Kafka turns to her and begs her to keep his secret, unintentionally terrifying the poor girl. As the Hanju charges up another powerful blast and fires at them, Kafka easily slaps the lightning ball away, like he is a character from Slam Dunk. He promises to explain everything later and urges her to get some rest. Kokomi informs Hoshino that a new kaiju has been detected with a fortitude of 9.8. Hoshino finds this difficult to believe and concludes that the blast must have affected the measurement system. Otherwise, this kaiju would be one of the most powerful in history. Kafka concentrates all his strength on one hand, aiming to finish off the Hanju with a single blow, knowing he has little time before the defense force arrives. His fist clashes with the Hanju's, and being the stronger one, Kafka's attack causes the Hanju's flesh to rip off its bones until it explodes. Kikoru is stunned by what she just witnessed. Kafka runs towards her and slaps away a Yaju that was trying to sneak up on her. He sternly warns her never to put her life in danger like that again. Touched that someone cares for her, Kikoru looks at Kafka with newfound respect. Ikikawa appears and hits Kafka on the head, scolding him for transforming into a kaiju. They argue back and forth until Kikoru loses consciousness. Mina and Hoshino arrive at the scene, surprised and confused. Kokomi informs them that all the trainees are safe. Hoshino notices that this blast is similar to the one from 3 months ago. He knows that Kikoru is strong but not strong enough to eliminate a Hanju as powerful as the one they faced. There's a lot they don't know, but they hope to find out. Kafka is back in the hospital, and he's not happy about it. Ikikawa is relieved that Kafka isn't as injured as he initially thought. Ikikawa informs Kafka that Kikoru is getting better. They argue back and forth, with Mina listening to their conversation outside the room. She walks in and thanks Kafka for rescuing Kikoru before walking away. Kafka tries to call out to her but stops himself. He resolves to only talk to her when he becomes an officer. Kikoru regains consciousness, and Hoshino walks in, asking if she really took down the Hanju by herself. To keep Kafka's secret, she lies, claiming she did it alone. Judging by her expression, Hoshino suspects she's hiding something. Meanwhile, the humanoid kaiju learns from the news that there were no casualties during the incident at the training ground. Disappointed that no one died, the kaiju's phone rings. It transforms into a human to answer the call, then walks out of the public toilet to join other sweepers, unaware that their lives are at risk.